In class, in preparation for the test, I had the students that were there perform some problems and practice some problems on the whiteboard. These are the problems that I had them practice. So if you would like extra practice, if you're stuck at home, here are some more options. Okay, so we want to graph this problem, and here is the information that we need to find. So on this one, to find the vertex, it's the opposite of what's in the parentheses. That'd be -7, and then the number at the end, which is -3. The axis of symmetry would be x equals -7. This graph, because it's negative, opens down. If it opens down, the vertex is the highest point, so it's a maximum, and it's a maximum at the y-coordinate. So we're going to graph this. So we're going to go to -7, 3, and make our point. Now with these problems, we used our pattern, and the pattern is over 1, up 1, over 2, up 2. But notice, because it's got the negative, it's got to go down. It's a reflection. So instead of going over 1, up 1, we're going to go over 1, down 1, and over 2, down 4. And now my parabola opens down. So my domain is still going to be all real numbers, because all of these are all real numbers, but the range, we're going to go from the bottom up. Well, we've got lots of numbers at the bottom, so it's going to start at negative infinity, but it stops right here at -3, and there's a bracket because that point is included. All right, this one wants us to find the vertex and the y-intercept. The vertex is found by taking the opposite of b over 2a. So the opposite of b would be -8. Over 2 times a is -2. This would give me -8 over -4, which is 2. So my vertex is going to be 2 something. To find the y, I have to take that 2 and plug it in. So I have -2 times 2 squared plus 8 times 2 minus 7. So first we'll take the 2 and square it, which is 4, times the -2 is -8. 8 times 2 is 16. Minus 7. -8 plus 16 is 8. Minus 7 is 1. So the vertex is at the point 2, 1. Now we need to find the y-intercept. Yes, we could use the pattern, but on these, because I asked you for these 2 facts, I want you to graph it using these 2 facts. The y-intercept is 0, some number. Well, that number is the number at the end right here, because if we find the y-intercept, we have to plug in 0 for x. Well, if all of these are going to be 0, then all that's left is the -7. So I'm going to plot the point 0, -7. Okay, we know that because it's a parabola, it is symmetric along the vertex. So since this point is 1, 2 spaces to the left, this one has to be 2 spaces to the right. And so there is my parabola. All right, last type of graphing, they wanted the x-intercepts and vertex and the different intervals. Well, to get the x-intercept, we have to plug in 0 for y. So we plug in 0 for y, and we're going to factor. Well, it's a binomial, but I can't take the square root of anything. So I'm going to have to look for the greatest common factor, which is 2. So I take out the 2, and I'm left with x squared minus 4. Because there's an x squared there, if there's just an x, I'd have to stop. But because there's an x squared there, that means I can factor further. This, in the parentheses, is a binomial, and I can take the square root of both, so it's going to factor to x plus 2, x minus 2, because the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 4 is 2. So this gives me -2, 0, and this gives me 2, 0. The 2 over here does not give me a solution. So here's -2, here's 2, 0. The vertex, we know, is going to be smack dab in the middle, which is going to have to be at 0. So now we're going to take 0 and plug it in. So I have 2 times 0 squared minus 8. Well, that's 0 minus 8, which would be -8. And I can plot my vertex. And here is my parabola. For the positive intervals, there's 1, 2 positive intervals. First one starts at -2, and it goes to the left. The left is smaller, so it's less than. Left and less than both start with L. So x is less than -2, so it's got to be greater than the other one, so greater than +2. It is negative down here in between the 2 numbers, so between -2 and 2. All right, perform the indicated operation. Now notice here there's a sign in between the parentheses. So on this first one, we need to subtract, and on this one, we need to add. So when we subtract, we change the sign to a plus, and then we change the sign of everything in the parentheses. Now all we have to do is combine like terms. -8, -12 is -20. 11i and 14i would be positive 25i. That's it. I squared equals -1. I don't have an I squared. I get I squared by multiplying I times I. I did not do that. I combine like terms. On this one, it's a plus sign. So because it's a plus sign, I don't need to change anything. -17 and 16 is -1. -9 and 5 is whoops, that is not all what I want to write. -4i. I'm done. That's it. Okay, now on number 3. Number 3, because this is right next to the parentheses right here, this means to multiply. Okay, so I'm going to take -4i times 3. Well, -4i times 3 would be -12i. Then I'm going to take -4i times -6i, which is positive 24i squared. I squared is -1, so positive 24 times -1 would be -24. That's all that I change. On number 4, we're going to multiply. I know that we're going to multiply because these parentheses are touching, okay? Now, I do notice that because on this one, the real numbers match and the imaginary numbers are the opposite sign. So these are conjugates. When they're the conjugates, then I can use my shortcut. And the shortcut means I'm going to take -9 times -9, which is positive 81. 3i times -3i is -9i squared. Oh, here we go again. We've got the I squared, which means -1. So -9i squared really means -9 times -1, which is positive 9. So this is 81 plus 9, which is 90. All right, last one. We need to write in this a plus bi form. To do that, you have to multiply the bottom by the conjugate. The conjugate of 4 minus 2i would be 4 plus 2i. The reason it's the conjugate is because the real number is the same, the imaginary is the opposite sign. Okay, when we do that, on the top, 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 2i is just 12i. We cannot change anything. We can only change it when it's I squared. On the bottom, we set it up intentionally to be conjugates, so it's going to be the shortcut. 4 times 4 is 16. -2i times -2i is -4i squared. I squared is -1, so this is really positive 4. So this is plus 4. So now I can rewrite this. The top, I cannot combine those like terms, so I get 24 plus 12i. On the bottom, 16 plus 4 is 20. It is at this point only that I can now separate it. So one fraction is going to be 24 over 20. Then I need the sign. Well, it's a plus sign right here, so I'm going to put a plus sign right here. My second fraction is this one, which would be 12i over 20. Before I call it good, I need to see if it reduces. It does. 24 divided by, I can divide both these by 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. And this is 5, so I can get 6/5. Plus, I can divide both of these by 4, so this is 3/5. So I get 3i over 5, and that is my final answer. Again, these problems were done on the whiteboard in class, so this is nothing to turn in. This is simply just extra practice so you can feel better prepared for your test.